Hi everybody. So hope you all are having a good weekend so far. I know I saw a few people were in the chat, not actually talking yet, but we're waiting and watching before it went live. And so I know this is an interesting topic because there's a lot of people who don't like it. And I already got a thumbs down on this video before I even went live. So I already know that there's going to be some controversy with it, but that doesn't matter. The law of attraction has proved itself to me time and time again. And another thing I've been thinking about is the fact that there's so many people, many Christians, who try to change how somebody else sees things. They'll try to change their mind, try to save them. And I know I've learned through my time on YouTube that you can't actually, save somebody. You can't say anything that's going to turn somebody around if they're not ready. If their spirit is not willing, if they're not ready to listen, they're just going to see things the way they see them because God blinded them. And I know there's a lot of people who don't even like the idea that God blinded them, but if God placed a curtain of love around the truth, and so you can't see the truth unless you come in agape love, which is what Kifa says, then you're not going to get there if you're not in that agape love state. And so you're blinded, spiritually blinded, and you can't see. And I have talked about how we are the ones who do that because it's when we sin that we fall off the path and we can't see the light as much because we're the ones who actually blind ourselves by falling into sin. But my point is you can't actually prove anything to anybody because they're not going to hear you if they're not in the right state of mind, if they're not in the right state of being. And logically, we can't prove anything to anybody else because they're not going to see things the way we see them. We're all in our own little worlds, even though we interact with each other. I've talked about that in the past. We're kind of all in our own dimensions, and we see things the way we see them, but nobody else sees the world as we do. Nobody else sees ourselves as we do. You can't. There was a post on Facebook, and he was talking about how his mind was kind of blown by the fact that nobody else in the whole world knows you as you do. So they don't really know the true you because nobody else is going to know every single thing that you've ever been through, why you act the way you do, why you do the things you do. It's just beyond somebody else to comprehend that because they don't know you and they can't know you 100%. Some people know you more than others. But that's why the law of attraction is perfect because it shows you who you are and you can improve yourself. And like I've talked about in the Lake of Fire video, it's sort of a purification process for us because only we can judge ourselves because we're the only ones who know ourselves. Yes, God knows us. He's inside. But that's the whole point. It's the spirit that's, convicting us. And so in our world, nobody else can prove anything. Science tries to prove things to the world, but they don't even know what's going on because they don't know. This world is not going to act the way they think it should act because it's acting on the law of attraction, which I have hypothesized, theorized that it is the law, the word of God that the world was made by. So, and that's because it perfects us, because it's like the lake of fire, it purifies us. And it's the perfect law to do that. If you keep, there was that thing, why do you keep hitting yourself? Why do you keep hitting yourself, right? We're just continually hitting ourselves by our sin. Every time we sin, we end up bringing consequences that are negative into our lives. We keep seeing it. The world keeps reflecting it back to us. And so, the question is, true, honest. Why do you keep hitting yourself? And so, the world at large, the scientific community is never going to get to that point unless they can understand the law of attraction is the only law this world is built upon. And that's probably why people can, they talk about yogis defying gravity and people living without food. And, if these people believe that they can force themselves into a place where they can. And it happens because they attract it. And I'm not opposed to the idea that, time travel could be possible if you actually believed that you were there, right? So it's just a matter of our mind of what we can believe in. But that's not really the point of this video. I'm just saying that the law of attraction has proved itself to me. And I don't care about proving it to anybody else. That's not my point here. It's just law. It's just the way the world works. And there's no question in my mind because of all the things that have happened to me. I mean, this past week, my dad wants me to vote, right? So he got me a ballot, one of those absentee ballots and everything. And so the idea of mailing in the absentee ballot was on my mind. The next thing you know, I'm on Facebook and I see a story from September about, college kids who are not voting because they don't know where to buy stamps. And then it hits me. I was just thinking about voting and stamps, and now I see this article in front of my eyes. And, it's from September, but somebody decided to post it that day, And I realized that's what Abraham talks about, is the fact that if you have little resistance, if you don't really care about what you're thinking about, you can attract it into your life very quickly. I didn't care about voting. I didn't care about stamps. But you can attract it like that. But if you have very strong emotions about it, like you really want it and you feel like you don't have it, then it's going to be harder for it to come into your life. So I want to get into the video, but I just wanted to point that out, that you can't prove anything to anybody else. And this has proved itself to me, and that's why I talk about it. This channel is not for me proving it to people. It's just explaining my thoughts with how it works and how does it relate to the Bible. Because even though I don't believe the Bible is the total word of God, I believe words of God are in there, wisdom is in there, and it actually talks about the law of attraction. And there's actually a couple links below from Neville Goddard, who uses a more biblical stance to sort of deal with the law of attraction. And so I suggest maybe checking those out if you're interested. And also, I think I left a link below to the Game of Life and how to play it. And that's another Christian view of the law of attraction. And a lot of it, is in the Bible. So I'm not going to debate that. It's just true to me. I've proved that already to myself. I see it. And, I only see good fruit coming from the law of attraction. There's a lot of people who, are in the Christian community. They debate the law of attraction. They think it's, new age or evil or something. And of course, I've talked about the new age is what we're looking forward to, after the lake of fire ages. And it's a good thing. It purifies us. If you keep attracting negative things, well, it's like a mirror that's showing you that something in you needs to change. So, but then people will say, but what about the babies? How are they attracting this circumstance where they are, aborted or sexually abused as soon as they're born, etc.? How did they attract that? And I've talked about in the past a video, babies are born being one with God, and they're perfect. They're beautifully formed in the womb by God, and they're one with God. They haven't fallen off the path yet. They are perfectly aligned with Him. And so how could they attract something negative into their life, like abortion or a sexual misconduct by a parent or babysitter or something like that? And so I personally believe in reincarnation also, because the Bible also talks about this, where there's the man who was born blind, and the disciples and everybody was asking why, was he born blind? Was it his fault? And so the question is, how could it be his fault if he was born blind? Well, only like a past life or something could bring that about, right? Or maybe he came into this world blind. And, Jesus says that's not the case, but it was to prove to people, what the power of God could do. And it's a very interesting thought, because I still think that a spirit can sort of decide to come into a body, and they want to maybe teach, something. And, the blind man was teaching people that the power of God can heal the blind. And so maybe children are born in order to, or not quite even born if they don't come out of the womb yet, right? But maybe they are formed in the womb and the spirit is there and everything, and they're, probably communing with the mother through that time period of the pregnancy. And then they come out for a reason. And I have one book, I'm trying to remember the name of it, something about the masters. I think it's Brian Weiss. He was talking about reincarnation with these past life regressions with people. And his son had this disease and had died before he met this woman who has past life regression. And then she says, well, not she, but she's like channeling or whatever when she's in the state after she died through this regression. And she says that the child was born for a lesson for him, to teach him that not, medical science can't cure everything. And then he went into other, the psychiatry, and then he was doing the past life regressions, and the past life regressions is what was curing people. So anyway, the point is that the child was born for a reason. And I think these spirits, when they're one with God, they don't see things as positive and negative so much as we do when we have sort of eaten from the tree, the fruit from the knowledge of the tree of good and evil and all that, right? I've talked about this in the past with the video, There's No Such Thing as Evil, which I know a lot of people disagree with, but there's really not. I mean, this world was created very good by our Creator, and nothing He can create, it could be evil. This world is here for a purpose, for us to see the bad and choose the good. And just like you cannot see the white stars in the sky, actually they're not even all white. If you look at them, sometimes they sparkle different colors back and forth like a strobe light. But if you see those lights in the sky at night, you couldn't see them in the daytime because there's no black night, to see them. We need the contrast in order to be amazed by the good light that we do see. So in order to be happy that you were reunited with a family member, you had to be apart from them. A lot of people go through this when their child is adopted, and maybe even the father didn't know the mother was pregnant, and the child got adopted, and then the child gets reunited with their father, and their father is so pleased to have this child, and the child's so pleased to have the father. And you can't have that amazing connection of being reunited unless you had the being apart. And that's the same thing with the prodigal son in the Bible. So in order to have the positives, we need the negatives. And so a child being born and then being sexually abused, maybe they chose that when they were in the state of being one with God and didn't see it as good and bad, but then they went into it and they, fell into the believing it was very bad, right? And then you get to see how very good it is to recover and to be able to have a real sexual union with a mate, husband or wife in the future, if you didn't actually go through this negative consequence. And also, you might learn about how to interact with people who have been sexually abused, and you might go on to lead counseling sessions with these people, or be a mentor to somebody else who had gone through the same thing, or to be able to see the signs and stop it from happening in the future. If you see somebody that you think might be sexually abusing or might be about to sexually abuse, and you could warn somebody or contact them and fix a situation where it doesn't actually lead to that in the future, to save things in the future. And so there's all sorts of positive things that can come out of a negative situation. And there's a lot of people out there who would say, well, it's completely wrong to just accept negative things as actually positive in the long run. How can you say this was bad? How can you say that? But do you really want to live in a world where everything that you see is, evil around the corner? You're going to be afraid of this rapist out there, or, the murderer that could come into your house at any second and all that. You really want to live in fear all the time. And some people choose to do that. They choose to do that until they get to the point where you can't live that way anymore. And then you break free. And that's what I've said. We were born free, and then we sort of got led into these bondages of being afraid of, I'm afraid of, what if I fail and I have to go bankrupt, or I'm afraid of this and I'm afraid of that. And you never take a chance. What if you're afraid of that person saying no if you ask them out, but maybe they were the love of your life, and we get all these different fears pumped into us as a child. But in the end, you can see that you could be completely free through the law of attraction. It's, Jesus came to free us from being slaves to sin. And there's so many people out there who think that they're stuck as a slave to sin, that Satan's at, right behind every single door, ready to attack like a lion, crawling around, looking for who he can devour. But he's been defeated. The adversary is defeated in Christ. And so if you're a Christian, you should not be afraid of things like that. You should know that we can be free. And Neville Goddard was talking about being free this morning. We are so free, and people just don't even realize it. And then they focus on the negatives and saying, but look at this. This is negative. This is negative. And they try to be so realistic, like this is reality. But the thing is, we're in the present. We can change reality through the law of attraction by how we're feeling right now. You can go through a breakup with somebody, maybe your spouse even, and you can choose in that moment to be sad, depressed, and awful feeling. Or you can choose to say, is anybody hitting me currently? Is anybody yelling at me currently? You can go through all this list and you think, well, no. How is my life currently? Well, it's pretty okay. I'm sheltered, and I've got food, and I've got a job, and I've got things that are taking care of me, and I don't have to worry. I don't have to be sad. You don't have to be. You can choose to not be. And I went through that, and I chose to not be. And life is getting better and better and better by what I'm focusing on, choosing to be positive. And we have that power, but so many people actually choose to stay upset. They choose to stay sad, and they just keep attracting this negative reality into their life. And I want to say I wish that they wouldn't, but it is what it is, and people will and they won't, But I'm just sharing my story so that if somebody actually believes me, can see a change through my videos in the past to where I'm at now, it's amazing how far I've come. And other people can too, as soon as we choose to focus on more positive things. And so back to my list of things that I was going to talk about. So I think that babies are actually more one with God and don't see things in the positive and negative as we do. They see things as learning experiences. And so I don't think, even though they might hurt, obviously, through an abortion, they're going to end up dead and one with God again, and then they can jump right back in to another life that may be more positive. They could come here also with reincarnation. They could have known the father and the mother, and maybe there was some sort of relationship thing that they were working out in the spirit that wouldn't have happened otherwise. I don't think they see things as negatively as we do. Like I said with the sexual abuse, that they could come out of it in the future more right, more on top of things, and they can appreciate how wonderful it feels to be free so much more than somebody else who never went through fear and terror before. And please let me know if everything's going all right in the chat, if you have any questions or comments too. And so another thing I was going to talk about, the animals. I know I'm vegan, and so I have a lot of more vegan people on my friends list and things like that now. And so I was thinking about the animals, and there's so many people who are upset about these animals in the slaughterhouse, and they get so sad and they get so angry. And the thing is, what you focus on is what keeps coming into your life, and this keeps you in that state of being where you're upset and you keep seeing the same thing over and over and over again. Whereas I've chosen to focus on the positives about all the different people going vegan, all the people waking up, all the new vegan businesses popping up. And so I share stories of positive news of that. And, you know, vegan eggs are just like outselling other eggs and things like that in the stores. And it's just amazing, all this stuff that's happening. People are waking up, and that's a positive thing. And so I focus on the positives, and I see more positives. And there's other people that just focus on the negatives, and then they keep seeing these negative things, and they keep kind of torturing themselves because there's nothing they can do for all the animals out there that are going to be slaughtered today. There's nothing you can do. So why are you focusing on something negative like that? But actually, with the law of attraction, you can do something. If you focus on all the positives, like all the people waking up and all the vegan things outselling negative things, like the real meat, real dairy, etc. If you focus on all these positive things, like vegan businesses popping up, it's going to be easier and easier for people to go vegan. And that's going to mean less and less animals are being killed and slaughtered and all that stuff. And so if you actually, the thing that you can do is focus on the positive. And when you focus on the positive, it'll bring the solution. And that's what we should be focusing on, the solution. But like I said, there's a lot of people that are upset about the animals. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit. And so again, I've talked about this before, where animals, maybe they were reincarnated people who actually killed animals. Like if somebody was, you know, working at a slaughterhouse day in and day out, killing animals all the time, getting insensitive to what they went through, and then they died, and then they went through the lake of fire, as I've talked about spiritually, they had to look at themselves in a mirror and feel what other people felt, or feel what other animals felt when they did everything that they did. They probably were going to feel very ashamed and upset and angry with themselves. And so they might actually choose to go back to see what it was like to be an animal in the slaughterhouse. They may go back to see what it was like to be maybe a child who was raped, you know, and you never know what somebody else could have done in a past life. We're just here to live in the present and learn from our world. And our world is reflecting back to us who we are. And that's a good thing. So if you see something negative in the world, you have to ask yourself, why is it there? Because we're attracting it. We are attracting these negative things into our life when they happen, and then we choose to call them negative. But the thing is, it's all there for our good. Because if you see something you don't like, you can change yourself inside. And when you change yourself inside, your world will reflect back to you that changed you. If you can be happy, thrilled, people are going vegan, you know, more vegan options for people. I couldn't find vegan pills, you know, anywhere in town, but I found them online. I'm thrilled about that. I'm embracing the online, you know, world that can sell us vegan items so that more people can go vegan. It's awesome. And if you focus on all these positive things, then you're going to see these positive things in your life. You're going to see the changes. Whatever you focus on sort of expands. It's like, you know, when you're looking at a tablet and you go like this, whatever you're focusing on is just expanding in your view. And if you choose to focus on negative things, well, that's expanding in your view. But if you choose to focus on positive things, that's what's going to expand in your view, and you're going to see more and more positive ones. If you focus your mind, you know, in between the temples of your mind, the kingdom of heaven's inside, and if you can focus on the positives and not be stuck in sin, like anger, you know, being mad at the people who have slaughterhouses and being mad at the people who buy non-vegan items, etc., that's not going to do you any good because you're stuck in anger. And that's not what God's feeling. He's not feeling angry with people. He knows they're making their own mistakes and things like that, and they're going to learn from them because their world is a reflection back to them about that. And so I know people don't really like to hear this idea. So I really don't even have that many people watching right now as I used to. But let's focus on the fact that it's growing, right? More people are watching it. So did the Jews attract the Holocaust, right? I mean, people don't like to hear this. Did, you know, somebody who got raped attract a rape? People don't want to hear this stuff. But the thing is, we do attract these things into our life, but maybe it's for a positive. Well, I believe everything's for a positive, as you can see in my, you know, good versus evil video. There's no such thing as good and evil. It's just all very good because we're all learning from it. And you can't have the positives without the negatives. So these things come into our lives and they are, they hurt, but it's helping us. And it's growing us. We hear this, idea that you can't, there's no pain without gain, or gain without pain, or whatever. And I don't believe that it has to be that way, but we sort of force ourselves into that situation because we don't learn. Unless we make mistakes, we don't realize that that was wrong. That's what I talked about with the whole growing in wisdom. Jesus grew in wisdom. And I'm like, well, how do you grow in wisdom? By making mistakes and realizing, hey, that was wrong to do. That didn't feel so good. So we don't do that anymore. And we just keep going with that. Every time we make a mistake or every time we see something we don't like, we just learn from it. Accept it, understand that, that I didn't like. And then you do the opposite, So we're taking these things in and, if you got raped, you can learn from it. And I know that it would hurt when you went through it and everything like that, but it's all in our perspectives. I know that, somebody can have sex and be thrilled, right? And then somebody can be raped and not be thrilled. And what is that about? It's about a lack of control. It's like feeling that your life is out of your control, that your body is out of your control, like you've sort of lost control. And so you look at, why did this come into my life? And it probably started out with a lack of control, a feeling of a lack of control. But we were all free and we all have the power to make our lives into what we want them to be by changing our thoughts in our minds. And so we can choose in the moment whether to, weep in sorrow or to be elated in joy. And there's an in-between. You just want to reach for something that feels a little bit better. But we have that power. And when we sort of feel like somebody else took that power away from us, that's when we're slaves. But Jesus said we were free. We can be free. And we just have to do what he said. And that, starts with forgiveness. So a lot of the times if somebody was having a feeling of, I don't have control over my life, I don't have power over my life, that's sort of an obligatory, somebody else has control over my life or somebody else has power over my life. And that means you gave your power over to somebody else. And like I've talked about in the forgiving others videos, when you have unforgiveness, you're a slave to whoever you're not forgiving. So you want to do the act of forgiveness, and then you take your power back. And that's what, Jesus is doing when he says, forgive your enemies and bless those who curse you. And, then he says you can be free if you do what I'm telling you to do. It's all about taking your power back by forgiving people and not being upset. And the more you're upset about a situation, the more power you're giving it. But if you choose to not be upset, you're taking your power back. If you choose to change your minds, you're taking your power back. If you choose a happier thought processes, choose to not focus on the negatives, choose to focus on the positives, you're taking your power back. And then once you've done that, you will realize your world is not going to make you feel like you're out of control. It'll make you feel powerful, all powerful, because you actually have all the power over your life inside of you based on your thoughts, on what you're choosing to think. And so I want to go on also with, do poor people actually attract poverty? And I believe that they do. And I'm looking at myself. I attracted poverty because I felt poor. So I'm not saying that, you can't donate to people, but this is something that's very interesting to me. If you keep giving money to somebody who feels poor, the money just pours right out. Pours out, It's like a cup with holes. You keep pouring money in, but their holes keep letting the money go out, It's not until somebody feels like they are rich or at least comfortable that when you put money in that it holds it, And so giving money to somebody who feels poor, it's probably not going to help them very much, because they're just going to let it go again. And you could say, well, then why should I give money to somebody who's homeless, right? Who's sitting out on the street? And here's the thing. You could give money to that homeless person and they might spend it, especially if you think that spend it like on something bad, especially if you think that they're going to, because your thought process of what they're going to do with that money is going to lead them to do that with that money, usually. So you obviously don't want to give to somebody when you're in a state of thinking that they're not going to do the right thing with it, because you're just going to attract that into your life. And the Didache talks about giving money to people, and you're supposed to hold it until you feel really led to give it away. And then when you give it away, you're not supposed to worry about where it's going to, because that's on them. So we're supposed to be able to give freely to somebody else, and then what they do with it is on them. So it's not that we aren't supposed to give. And the other thing is, if you're in a state of being where you want to donate some of your money, just have the money flowing into your life and out of your life, in and out, if we're in this constant state of in and out, we're more going with the flow. And then when you're giving it to somebody, you want to give it to somebody like an investment, like they're going to take that and do something with it really great for the world, even if it's just somebody who's out on the street. Well, maybe he's going to go get a haircut and then get a job interview and then get a job, etc. If you can think positive things, it's much better. Obviously, when you're giving a homeless person some money, it would be much better if you're thinking positively for them, because that, vibration or frequency could sort of help them to do what they want to do with the money when you're in the process of giving it like that. So yeah, I really think that our attitude of where the money's going is probably going to really help the end result with that. But it works in a negative way, of course, obviously. So if you think that somebody's going to misuse it, then they might misuse it or whatever. But I'm not saying you shouldn't donate. The other thing is that if somebody is in need of money, then they're going to attract that money. If they're not say in need, because that kind of gives them an idea of, if you feel like you're in need, it means you're without, and you're going to keep attracting not having it. But if they were supposed to be getting donated to, let's say, because they have more of a frequency of God provides, and so they're emitting this frequency, God provides me with all the money that I need to buy whatever I need to do. So think homeless person on the street, but God always provides me. Then you come along and then you donate to them, and you are a part of that frequency that they caused that to happen. They attracted you to donate money to them because they know God provides. So they attracted that situation into their life. So when I say that poor people are attracting poverty, if they're in a state of poverty in their minds, they are. And so if you gave them money, then it might not, stay there. Like I said, the Didache says, don't worry about it. If you felt led to give them money and then, they used it in a negative way, you're not supposed to worry about it. That's on them. That's why I talked about that with taxes, because they take them. But like I said, where our frequency is, I think, is where that money is going to end up in a positive way. So if I say I'm going to pay taxes for something positive, to help the homeless, and maybe it does go to help the homeless. And how do you know where that money is going? Well, I'm saying I think by your frequency, it's going to go to the right place. So I'm not saying we shouldn't donate to people, like I said, but poor people can attract poverty over and over and over again. And that's not on you. That's not, but we can make the decision to envision these people putting more faith in God and putting more faith in the universe to provide them with opportunities to get up and get help and, become more investing in the future, because people who have been down and out are some of the greater people in the future, because they know what it's like to be without. They want to give back and help people more in the future. So if somebody's been through like the worst thing that you could possibly think about in your life and their life, then they could be flip side, the total opposite and positive once they got, saved, by realizing this change, this shift in thought, because they know what it's like to be without. That's what I'm saying with, you need the negative to get the positive. The people who have done the most positive things in this world are probably people who had very negative things happen to them in the past. And so how can we look at these negative things as negative things if they led to all this positivity in our world? So that's why I can't see any bad, because everything turns out to be good. We have to have the words good and bad to discuss things with each other, but I don't believe that there is anything really negative, because this world was created very good. So how do you deal with knowing that you attracted the bad stuff in your life? Well, I just say, think of it as a learning experience. And I think that every single thing that is bad in our life, we are putting the positive, like I talked about in my last Sabbath live chat, into the kingdom of heaven, our heavenly treasures. So if you went through an abusive relationship with somebody, they were verbally abusive or physically abusive, then as soon as you went through this, you say, I don't like this, then you don't even have to say it. Your spirit, moans and groans for you according to scripture without you having to say a thing. So your spirit is saying, God, please do the opposite of whatever's going on right now. I want relationships where people don't abuse me. I want people to talk positively to me and not negatively to me. I want people to see the positive in me and not see the negative in me. And so immediately in that situation, you've already put that into the heavenly treasures of things that you want, things you've asked for. God provides immediately because he's outside of time. So it's already there. So every single thing that you've gone through that's bad, there's a positive correlation to it. And it's just waiting for you to get into the right frequency to receive it. So you can see my last video for more information about that. But the point being is that every single negative that you're in, understand that it's for a greater good, because you're learning what you don't like. So you're getting what you do like. And all you have to do is align with what you do like. And I say that as if it's really easy. I went through the poverty. I went through the bankruptcy. And I put money, a lot of money, so that I have the ability to be free and not have to worry about bills, etc., into the heavenly treasures, right? And I'm trying to get into that state of being, and I'm getting better and better, and I'm getting better and better. And the point being is, I know that it's a process. It's not an overnight thing. It's very easy for you to get into the frequency of something you do want if you don't care about it much. But it's usually the things that we really are worried about, frustrated about, that are harder for us to get into the frequency of being one with it. I know people are having issues with their family members. Sometimes they don't want to associate with them, etc. They're not, simpatico or whatever, but you want to get yourself into this state of being where you're one with the idea that you guys are getting along, that everything is getting better and better. Families are coming together, etc. You think positively about all this stuff. Imagine it. Neville Goddard actually did one of the videos I have linked to below, where he talks about this grandmother who had a relationship, I think it was her grandchildren. She wanted to write letters. She wanted to receive letters, from them, where they were, more on a friendly state. And so she was envisioning these letters, getting letters. Of course, it's from the older time where people actually wrote snail mail versus email or something. But, get yourself into the situation where you're envisioning everything that you want to happening in your imagination. If you can actually feel like you're actually there, that will bring it closer and closer to actually becoming true. And of course, she got the letters as far as that story went. But we have to get ourselves into the believing state. And so I do say, imagine these things, daydream about them. I used to daydream all the time, and I didn't know why. I used to daydream before bed, and now I know why. So what we think about can be attracted into our life if we feel like we already have it. But it's the feeling as if you're poor, feeling as if, nobody really takes you seriously, or feeling of nobody gets along with me, or feeling like I hate my job, etc., that keeps those things being negative. We have to get our minds from the past feeling like a victim. Because if you can feel like you're no longer a victim, that you're on top of the world. They hold they hold nothing over you anymore. If you can feel like you're no longer a victim, then you're no longer a victim. If you can feel like you're free, then you're no longer free. Then you're no longer a slave, right? And he talked about being in prison and being physically in prison. And yeah, if you're physically in prison, you can still feel like you're free. And if you can feel like you're free in prison, then you'll probably become free. Another thing he mentioned that I found very, very interesting was he got drafted and he didn't want to be in a war. He didn't want to be in the army or whatever it was. But he got drafted. And so he went up to the basic training. And so then he went through the basic training. But at night he would go to bed and he would envision himself back with his family, etc., not there. And then they kicked him out, basically, but dishonorably discharged. And the thing is, he attracted the state of being in that place for a reason. And he said later on that was how he's going to get his citizenship, I think. But to the U.S. So the thing is, it worked as a stepping stone for something greater, but he didn't actually have to go through with it. There's a lot of people that call themselves draft dodgers, where they got into the draft and then they wanted to run away, burn their draft card, etc. And they were just rebelling against something they attracted into their life. If they had accepted and then just thought of themselves as not having to go, or having a good job where they didn't have to do what they didn't want to do, etc., and not being deployed or whatever, then they could have rode the wave, or gone with the flow, gone down the stream, etc., and just seen where it took them. But the thing is, people were attracting it, and by thinking like, oh, they're probably going to draft me. They're probably going to draft me. They're probably going to draft me. It sort of led them to being drafted. That sort of idea that like what you don't want is what's going to happen into your life. And so there's this idea that they could have changed their mind. Even after being drafted, you could change your thought process and get free again. And so we have all this control, and it's really amazing to me that everybody in this world has all this control. We're attracting our president. We're attracting, our government. And we have all this control, and people they act like they have no control at all. But when they feel like they have no control at all, they attract a world where they feel like they have no control at all. And it's really amazing how much control we have. And that's why I started this. We actually are so free. We can choose our bondage. We're so free we can choose to be in a world we hate. But we can choose to be in a world we love too. And that's basically what I'm trying to do. And that's my point. So let's see, what else did I want to talk about? I think that was about it. Are there any questions or comments, thoughts or whatever? This is just such an interesting topic to me. I think people really just sort of, I don't know. I don't want to say they hate it. There's some people that love it, that understand the positives, the amazing things that can come from this. And I don't want to focus on negatives. I want to focus on positives about how amazing it can be. But I also wanted to give some answers. Maybe, hopefully this answered some people's thoughts on things. So anyway, I'm just looking at the chat. Yeah, it is better to light a candle and curse the darkness. Yeah, so I just want to kind of light that spark in people that we can bring ourselves together. And I think with that whole egregore idea, we can all pray and have, more power with us praying for the same positive things in this world, and seeing people wake up and seeing this law of attraction gain momentum in people, and see how much we can change the world for the better. And I think that's amazing. I think people are finally starting to get it. And I'm really thrilled and excited for what can come. And I also received a package yesterday. And I'd ordered this thing thinking that I could use it to make money and all that stuff. And it came and it was defective, let's say. And so I had to send it back. But I was at first like upset but I'm in such a great state of mood, a state of mind, being, that I realize that this is all happening for my greater good. So I know that whatever the reason is, then I have to go ahead and go with the positives. So I took the steps to send it back, to Amazon with a return and all that stuff, and that's fine. That actually went so great, and I found it so funny because the numbers, I'm seeing 114 and 441 and all that stuff, and that was part of the numbers when I ordered it. But also when I was packing it up and ready to send it back, UPS has to come and pick it up and all that stuff. But when I was like printing the label to send it back, I noticed it was 4:11 p.m. And I just thought to myself, that's so funny. I know that there's a reason for this, because the numbers were all lining up, and everybody else has their own numbers and their own things. And I'm sure it's because I was so focused on 144,000 that the numbers 144 and all that stuff was coming into my mind. So those are the numbers that I see now. But other people have different numbers, and I also did a video about 1111 if you're interested in why it's 1111 and all that, and why people keep seeing it. The main topic of this video is to discuss why negative, bad things happen to people, and whether or not they're attracting it with the law of attraction. And I do believe people are attracting it, but I basically already talked about it. So you can actually see this video from the beginning if you want to. You can rewind it. It's always going to be up. You can watch it whenever. Were there any other questions or comments or thoughts or anything? There's a lot of spiritual stuff going on around us, but we have all the power inside. So if we choose to think about positives, we can see more positive things happen. If you choose to focus on the negatives, then that's what you'll keep seeing in your life. So we need to keep focusing on positive things, keep our mind on the kingdom of heaven coming about here now, and people are waking up, and there's less and less killing of animals, etc., because people are going vegan and all that stuff, and we're coming up with new innovative ideas to get rid of trash, etc. There's all sorts of positive things coming up that we can be focusing on. Are there any other questions or comments or thoughts or anything? Otherwise, I might end the stream, just because I already talked about what I was going to talk about here. I guess one thing is just, whenever anything happens in your life, just choose to think positively about it. Even if you think it's a negative, just say, God works all for me. Everything is working out for me. Everything happens for a reason, and there's a positive for it. I know I've talked about this before. Many times I've gotten sick or felt bad, and it ends up that it's all for my greater good, that I end up making money because of it, or something is positive because of it. So every single supposedly negative thing leads to a greater positive, so there's nothing really negative in this world at all. All right, I hope you all enjoyed this chat, and have a great weekend. Yeah, I hope everybody's happy and healthy and wise. Maybe wiser for listening to this. Keeping our eyes on the prizes rather than on the negative things, on the struggles and all that. Yes. Have trust and faith that God is working everything out for our greater good, and it is. He is. Always. Shalom, everybody.